The rescue fleet arrived at Kepler 442b expecting to find a dead world. Ambassador Zethka stood on the bridge of her flagship watching the scanner displays that should have shown empty space where New Haven used to be. Instead, the instruments detected massive energy signatures and construction activity on a scale that defied explanation. "This cannot be accurate," said the ship's science officer as readings poured in from their sensors. "The energy output from the planet's surface is 10 times higher than before the storm. There are new structures everywhere. The population centers have expanded across 3 continents." Zethka felt something she had never experienced in her 3,000 years of life. She was looking at the impossible made real. The cosmic storm that should have wiped Kepler 442b clean of life had instead somehow made the human colonies stronger than ever. The communication array crackled to life with Jake Morrison's voice broadcasting from the planet's surface. "Ambassador Zethka, welcome back to New Haven. We hope you brought more colonists because we have room for about 50,000 new residents." When the alien delegation landed at New Haven's expanded spaceport, they found a city transformed. The storm had cleared away the original settlement, but in its place the humans had built something magnificent. Towers made of crystallized storm energy rose from the ground like frozen lightning. Streets were paved with materials that had been forged in the cosmic storm's incredible pressures. Gardens grew in soil enriched by exotic particles that had fallen from space during the 18-day tempest. Colony Administrator Ben Clark met them at the landing pad. His hair was now completely silver, but his eyes burned with the excitement of someone who had lived through the impossible and emerged victorious. "The storm was the best thing that ever happened to New Haven," he announced to the stunned alien visitors. "It gave us access to energy sources and materials we never could have obtained otherwise." The walking tour of New Haven revealed changes that challenged everything the galactic community thought they knew about frontier colonization. The underground cities that had sheltered the population during the storm had been expanded into a vast network of interconnected chambers and tunnels. Some extended deep into the planet's core where geothermal energy was so abundant that industrial processes ran continuously without need for external power. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Patricia White led them through the colony's expanded medical facilities. The cosmic storm had brought with it exotic radiations that would have been deadly to most species, but which human researchers had learned to harness for medical treatments. The storm particles have remarkable healing properties when properly processed, she explained as they passed through treatment rooms where patients recovered from injuries that would have been permanently disabling before the storm. "We can regrow lost limbs, regenerate damaged organs, and cure diseases that were incurable before. The storm that was supposed to kill us instead gave us the tools to heal in ways we never imagined possible." But the most shocking discovery was in the colony's expanded living areas. Families had not just survived the cosmic storm but had thrived during it. Children who had been born during the 18 days of chaos were developing faster and stronger than normal human children. They showed resistance to radiation that would kill unprotected adults and could process atmospheric gases that were toxic to their parents. "We call them the storm generation," explained teacher Sarah Kim as she led the delegation through the colony's new educational facilities. They were conceived and born during the cosmic storm's passage. The exotic energy seemed to have enhanced their development in ways we are still studying. The classroom they visited was filled with children who could perform feats that seemed impossible. 10-year-olds lifted equipment that should have required adult strength. Teenagers solved mathematical problems in their heads that would challenge advanced computers. Most remarkably, they could communicate directly with the shadow stalkers without need for translation devices. A young girl named Emma Walsh raised her hand during the demonstration. "Ambassador Zethka, would you like to see how we talk to the deep earth creatures?" Without waiting for an answer, she began making sounds that were not quite human speech. The sounds resonated through the room's floor and walls, carrying into the planet's depths. Within minutes, several shadow stalkers emerged from hidden passages in the classroom walls. But these were not the same creatures the aliens had seen before the storm. The cosmic energies had affected them as well, making them larger and more intelligent. They moved with purpose and carried tools that showed they had developed technology during their underground months with the humans. One of the shadow stalkers approached Zethka and spoke in perfectly clear galactic standard. "Ambassador, your people warned that the storm would bring death. Instead, it brought evolution. We are no longer simple predators. We are partners with humanity in building something greater than either species could achieve alone. The tour continued to the planet's polar research stations where Tony Adams had established industrial complexes that processed materials created during the cosmic storm's passage. The extreme cold that had once been a survival challenge was now used to create alloys and crystals that had properties unknown to galactic science. The storm deposited exotic matter all across the planet's surface. Tony explained as they watched automated mining equipment harvest materials that glowed with their own internal energy. Some of these substances only exist in the hearts of neutron stars. Others are theoretical particles that our physicists thought could not exist in normal space. The storm brought us samples of matter from across the galaxy. Engineer Sandra Lopez demonstrated the colony's new power systems in the Energy Management Center. The collection arrays that had captured the storm's power were now permanently integrated into New Haven's infrastructure, providing energy on a scale that rivaled small stars. We have enough stored energy to power our entire civilization for centuries, she reported as displays showed power levels that made the alien observers' instruments overload. But more importantly, we learned how to work with forces that most species consider uncontrollable. We can create controlled gravitational fields, manipulate spacetime on small scales, and generate exotic particles for industrial use. The real revelation came when they visited the colony's new spaceport. Construction was underway on vessels designed with technology that had been impossible before the storm. Ships that could travel faster than light by riding gravitational waves. Exploratory craft that could survive in the hearts of gas giants or the surface of neutron stars. The storm taught us that the universe has more possibilities than we ever imagined, Jake Morrison explained as they watched the first of the new ships being assembled. Every challenge we overcome shows us new ways to push beyond what we thought was possible. Atmospheric specialist Gary Mitchell had used the storm's aftermath to establish weather control systems across the entire planet. What had once been random destructive weather patterns were now predictable and controllable forces that served the colony's needs. We do not fight the weather anymore, Gary demonstrated as he adjusted controls that directed atmospheric currents and precipitation patterns. We partner with it. The storms bring us energy. The temperature variations power our industrial processes. The atmospheric pressure changes help us with mining operations deep underground. As the alien delegation prepared to leave New Haven, Ambassador Zeth Ka found herself in the colony's memorial garden. But unlike the somber monuments of her own people, this memorial celebrated lives lived fully in defiance of impossible odds. Statues honored colonists who had died exploring the planet's most dangerous regions. Plaques commemorated children who had been born during cosmic storms or volcanic eruptions. Young marine biologist Alex Turner was teaching a mixed group of human children and Shadowstalker youth about the creatures that lived in the planet's deepest places. The cosmic storm had awakened things that had slept in the planet's core for millions of years. Instead of fearing these ancient beings, the humans were learning to communicate with them and understand their role in the planet's ecosystem. They have been the planet's guardians for longer than our civilizations have existed, Alex explained to his students. The storm woke them up because they sensed that something new was happening on their world. When they realized that we were trying to work with the planet instead of against it, they began teaching us about its deepest secrets. That evening, Jake Morrison stood in the observation tower of New Haven's central government complex, looking out over a city that had grown beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The lights of human and Shadowstalker dwellings twinkled across a landscape that had been transformed by forces beyond imagination. In the distance, construction crews worked around the clock building the infrastructure for settlements that would house millions of people. The communication system crackled with reports from other human colonies across the frontier. Each world had faced its own version of the cosmic storm, and each had found ways not just to survive but to use the experience for growth and advancement. The network of human settlements was expanding at a rate that alarmed other galactic. The warning came on a quiet Tuesday morning, when the long-range sensors detected something that made every alien in the galaxy flee in terror. Chief Science Officer Sandra Lopez stood in the observatory reading data that showed a cosmic storm system building power as it moved through space toward their sector. The storm was massive beyond comprehension, carrying energies that could strip atmosphere from worlds and radiation that could sterilize entire star systems. "How long do we have?" asked Jake Morrison as he studied the readings on Sandra's screens. The numbers were terrifying even by human standards. Wind speeds that move faster than light, temperature variations that could freeze and boil matter at the same time, gravitational distortions that could warp space itself into impossible shapes. 6 months if it maintains current speed, Sandra answered. "But Captain, these readings are beyond anything in our databases. This storm has been building power for centuries as it moves between star systems. Every civilization in recorded history has evacuated before storms like this. The data showed the destruction left behind by similar cosmic storms. Planets scoured clean of life, moons torn apart by gravitational forces, space stations found as twisted metal debris floating in empty void. The storm was not just weather in space. It was like a living thing that fed on energy and matter, and left only emptiness behind." Within hours of detecting the storm, New Haven received an emergency communication from the Galactic Council. Ambassador Zethka's image appeared on every screen in the colony, her clear face showing more fear than anyone had ever seen from her species. "Captain Morrison, you must evacuate immediately," she said. "We are sending every available ship to remove your population before the storm arrives. There can be no delay, no discussion. This is not a request but an emergency directive from the Council." The evacuation fleet that arrived at New Haven was the largest gathering of ships anyone had seen. Vessels from dozens of different races filled the space around Kepler 442b. Cargo haulers that could carry thousands of people, medical ships equipped to treat every known species, military escorts to protect the evacuation convoy from the dangers of deep space travel. But Jake Morrison had different plans. Instead of preparing for evacuation, he called a meeting of the Colonial Council in the Great Hall that had been built in the center of New Haven. Every citizen who could attend was there, along with representatives from the Shadow Stalkers and delegations from other human frontier colonies. "Friends and neighbors," Jake began, "you have all heard about the cosmic storm that is coming our way. The Galactic Council wants us to evacuate. They want us to abandon our homes and flee to safety in the inner systems." He paused and looked around the hall at faces that showed determination instead of fear. "I say we stay and ride out the storm." The plan Jake outlined was audacious even by human standards. Working with Chief Engineer Sandra Lopez and atmospheric specialist Gary Mitchell, they had spent months developing a strategy to survive the cosmic storm by using the planet's own geography as protection. "We go underground," Jake explained as holographic displays showed the extensive cave systems that honeycombed Kepler 442b. "The Shadow Stalkers have shown us tunnels that go deep into the planet's core. We expand these into underground cities connected by transport tubes. The surface installations get sealed and hardened to survive the storm." Dr. Helen Moore stood to address the crowd. Her alliance with the Shadow Stalkers had revealed cave networks that human surveys had missed. "The native species have survived cosmic storms before. They know places deep in the planet where the worst effects cannot reach. They have agreed to guide us to these refugees and help us prepare them for human habitation." The most dangerous part of the plan came from weather modification specialist Carl Davis. Instead of simply hiding from the cosmic storm, he proposed capturing its energy and using it to power a massive expansion of the colony. "These storms carry more energy than our civilization uses in a century," Carl explained. "If we can build collection arrays that survive the initial impact, we can harvest enough power to expand our operations across the entire planet. The storm that is meant to destroy us becomes the foundation of our future growth." Ambassador Zethka attended the meeting with representatives from other council races. They listened to the human plans with growing alarm as each proposal seemed more impossible than the last. "This is madness," declared the insect-like representative from the Hive Collective. "Cosmic storms have destroyed civilizations that were millions of years old. Your colony is barely 3 years established. You do not have the technology or resources to survive such forces." Gary Mitchell smiled as he showed technical diagrams of the storm shelters they planned to build. "Sir, respectfully, you are thinking like someone who wants to fight the storm. We are not going to fight it. We are going to dance with it. Use its own power against it. Let it teach us how to be stronger." The preparation work began immediately. Construction crews led by Danny Walsh worked around the clock to excavate underground chambers large enough to house the entire population. The natural cave systems were expanded and reinforced with materials designed to withstand pressures that could crush diamonds. Air filtration systems were installed that could work even if the planet's atmosphere was stripped away. The Shadow Stalkers proved invaluable partners in the underground construction. Their natural ability to move through tight spaces and their intimate knowledge of the planet's geology allowed them to guide human workers to the safest and most stable areas. They worked alongside human crews carving tunnels through solid rock and installing the infrastructure needed to support an underground civilization. They understand the planet in ways our instruments never could, reported Helen Moore as she coordinated between human and Shadow Stalker work teams. They know which rock formations will hold under extreme pressure and which areas have natural radiation shielding. Without their help, this project would be impossible. Meanwhile, on the surface, Carl Davis supervised the construction of the energy collection arrays. These were massive structures designed to capture and channel the cosmic storm's power into the colony's energy grid. They looked like giant metallic flowers with petals that could adjust their angles to catch energy from any direction. The theory is simple. Carl explained to the alien observers who watched the construction with horrified fascination. The storm carries electromagnetic energy, gravitational distortions, and exotic particle streams. Our collectors are designed to absorb these forces and convert them into usable power. If our calculations are correct, we will have enough energy to power industrial operations on a planetary scale. The aliens exchanged worried glances. A creature that looked like living crystal spoke in harmonics that translated as deep concern. Your calculations assume that your collection systems will survive the initial impact. Cosmic storms carry forces that can tear apart stellar matter. How can your technology withstand such power? Sandra Lopez answered from her position at a control console covered in engineering displays. Because we built them to bend instead of break. Most technology tries to resist destructive forces by being stronger than the forces acting on them. Our systems are designed to absorb and redirect those forces instead of opposing them directly. As the months passed and the cosmic storm grew closer, other species began evacuating from the entire star system. Space traffic became a constant stream of ships fleeing toward the safer inner regions of the galaxy. Only the humans remained working frantically to complete their preparations. The final weeks before the storm's arrival were filled with activity as the last surface installations were sealed and the population moved into their underground refuges. Children who had been born on New Haven helped their parents carry supplies through tunnels lit by bioluminescent organisms that the Shadow Stalkers had cultivated. Families set up homes in chambers carved from living rock deep beneath the planet's surface. Dr. Kate Williams established medical stations throughout the underground complex. Her team prepared for injuries that might result from the storm's effects, but also for the psychological challenges of living underground for an extended period. The physical dangers are obvious, she explained to her medical staff. Structural collapse, radiation exposure, atmospheric pressure changes. But the real challenge will be maintaining morale during what could be weeks or months underground. We need to keep people busy and give them hope that this plan will work. 3 days before the storm was due to arrive, Jake Morrison received a final plea from Ambassador Zeth K. Her image appeared on the communication screen in the underground command center, looking more desperate than anyone had ever seen her. Captain, please reconsider. It is not too late to evacuate. We can have transport ships here in hours. Your people do not have to die for pride or stubbornness. Jake looked around the command center at his staff who were monitoring the final preparations. Sandra Lopez tracked the storm's approach on her instruments. Gary Mitchell supervised the sealing of the last surface installations. Helen Moore coordinated with Shadow Stalker leaders who had moved their own young into the deepest and safest caverns. Ambassador, Jake replied, I appreciate your concern more than you know. 2 years had passed since the first humans landed on Kepler 442b. What started as one small dome in a valley of death had grown into a city of 50,000 people. The colony called New Haven now stretched across 3 different climate zones, and each one was more deadly than Earth's worst disasters. Agricultural specialist Nancy Green stood in her greenhouse, looking at rows of corn that grew in soil toxic enough to kill most known life forms. The plants were tall and healthy, with ears bigger than any grown on Earth. She wore only light clothing because the greenhouse's environmental systems had learned to work with the planet's natural heat instead of fighting against it. The secret is not trying to change the soil, she explained to a group of visiting Altarian scientists. The aliens wore full environmental suits even inside the protected greenhouse. Their blue skin showed through clear helmets as they nervously watched Nancy handle the toxic earth with her bare hands. We spent the first 6 months trying to make Earth normal soil, Nancy continued. Lost 3 crops that way. Then we realized we were thinking about it wrong. This planet's soil is incredibly rich. It has minerals that don't exist on Earth. The trick is learning to work with what's here instead of trying to make it into something it's not. She picked up a handful of the dark red soil. Steam rose from it as moisture met the mineral compounds that would burn human skin on contact. But Nancy had spent 2 years building up immunity by handling small amounts every day. Now her hands were tough as leather and her body had adapted to process the trace amounts of toxins that got into her system. These heavy metals that your instruments say are poisonous, she said to the aliens. They're actually plant nutrients once you know how to balance them. Our corn here has protein levels 30% higher than Earth varieties. The potatoes are so rich in minerals that eating one gives you a full day's nutrition. The lead Altarian scientist's translator device made worried chirping sounds. But the contamination levels are beyond our safety limits. How do humans consume this food without dying? Nancy smiled and bit into a raw ear of corn. The kernels were deep red instead of yellow, but they tasted sweet and rich. Same way we learned to eat everything else. Start small and build up tolerance. Human digestive systems are incredibly adaptable. We can process foods that would poison most other species. Meanwhile, at the colony's geological survey station, Rick Parker was demonstrating humanity's approach to planetary instability. The station was built directly over a fault line where 2 continental plates met. Every few hours, the ground would shake as the planet's crust adjusted itself. Other species would have seen this as a disaster waiting to happen. Humans saw it as a source of unlimited energy. Earthquake in 30 seconds, Rick announced to his team. He read the seismic data on his screens like a weather forecast. Magnitude 4.2. Duration approximately 90 seconds. Energy yield equivalent to a small nuclear reactor. The building shook as the earthquake hit. Equipment rattled on tables, but nothing fell over. The humans had learned to build everything to withstand the planet's constant motion. More importantly, they had learned to harvest the earthquake's energy through geothermal taps connected to the fault line. There we go, Rick said as the shaking stopped. That one just powered the entire mining operation for the next 6 hours. Next one should hit in about 4 hours, 20 minutes. A big one this time may be magnitude 6. An observer from the hegemony looked confused. The reptilian alien scales changed color from green to yellow, which indicated distress. You can predict the earthquakes. How is this possible? Pattern recognition, Rick explained. Every planet has rhythms. This one's crust moves in cycles based on the gravitational pull from its 3 moons. Once you map the stress patterns, it becomes as predictable as tides. We've got earthquake prediction down to within 5 minutes. Accuracy, but the most amazing, development was taking place in the research stations, scattered around the planet's most dangerous regions. Dr. Helen Moore had made contact with the creatures that had terrorized previous colonization attempts. The Shadow Stalkers were apex predators that could camouflage themselves perfectly and moved faster than human eyes could track. They're not monsters, Helen reported to the Colonial Council during their weekly meeting. They're intelligent pack hunters with a complex social structure. The previous colonization attempts failed because they tried to drive the Shadow Stalkers away. We succeeded because we showed respect. The meeting was held in the council chamber built in the center of New Haven. Through the windows, they could see Shadow Stalkers moving through the city streets alongside human citizens. The creatures were tall and thin like living shadows, but their eyes glowed with intelligence. Some carried human tools in their manipulator appendages. Others had learned to operate simple machinery. The Shadow Stalkers have been watching us since we landed, Helen continued. They were testing us to see if we were another invasive species that would try to destroy their habitat. When they realized we were trying to work with the environment instead of against it, they began approaching our research teams. Colony Administrator Ben Clark nodded as he reviewed Helen's reports. His hair had turned gray during his 2 years on New Haven, but his eyes were bright with excitement about each new discovery. What have they taught us about the planet? More than our instruments could learn in decades, Helen answered. They know weather patterns we cannot detect. They can predict volcanic eruptions days before our seismic equipment shows any change. They've shown us cave systems that extend all the way to the planet's core. And most importantly, they've warned us about the things that live in the deep places. The most impressive expansion had taken place in the polar regions, where temperatures dropped low enough to freeze carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Tony Adams had established research stations in areas that registered as absolutely uninhabitable on galactic survey charts. His teams wore environmental suits designed to work in conditions that would instantly kill most alien technology. The cold is not really the problem, Tony explained to a group of visiting dignitaries from the Galactic Council. They stood in his command center watching displays that showed external temperatures low enough to shatter most metals. The problem is that most species think of cold as the absence of heat, but cold can be a tool if you know how to use it. Through the reinforced windows, they could see human workers moving across the frozen landscape. They rode vehicles with special treads designed to grip ice as hard as stone. Their suits generated heat through chemical reactions that worked even in vacuum conditions. Most amazingly, they were not just surviving in the polar wastes, but actually mining rare elements from the frozen ground. These rare earth minerals only form under extreme cold and pressure, Tony continued. They're worth more than gold on the galactic market, but most species cannot survive long enough in these conditions to extract them. Humans adapted to the cold by treating it like any other tool. We use it to preserve food. We use it to purify materials. We use it to create alloys that cannot be made any other way. When Ambassador Zethka returned for her annual inspection, she found changes that defied everything she thought she knew about frontier colonization. Humans had not only survived on New Haven, they had turned it into one of the most productive worlds in the Outer Rim. Children who had been born on the planet played games that would have killed trained alien soldiers. This should not be possible, she said to Jake Morrison, as they walked through New Haven's central market. Human vendors sold fruits and vegetables grown in toxic soil. Shadow stalkers worked alongside human mechanics repairing mining equipment. Children ran between the stalls wearing light clothes that left them exposed to radiation levels that would cook most organic tissue. Jake stopped at a fruit stand run by an elderly human woman named Martha Collins. She had been one of the first colonists and her skin was weathered by 2 years of exposure to an alien environment. But she was healthy and strong and her smile showed genuine happiness. "Try this," Martha said, offering them both a piece of fruit that glowed with its own internal light. "It's a hybrid we developed using local genetics. Tastes like strawberries but with 10 times the vitamin content." Zethka stared at the glowing fruit. "The radiation readings from that food are off our charts. It would be toxic to my species." Martha laughed and took a big bite of the fruit. Juice ran down her chin and her skin briefly glowed with the same light as the fruit. "Honey, everything on this planet would be toxic to most species. That's what makes it perfect for humans. We're the only ones crazy enough to adapt to it." As they continued their tour, Jake pointed out the expansion projects that were already underway. New settlements were being built in the volcanic highlands where lava flows provided natural heating. Underground cities were being carved from solid rock in areas where the surface was too dangerous even for humans. Orbital stations were being constructed to harvest energy from the system's radiation storms. "Every challenge this planet throws at us becomes an advantage," Jake explained. "The toxic soil grows incredible crops. The earthquakes provide unlimited power. The radiation gives us energy for industrial processes." 6 months later, the colony ship Pioneer moved through space toward Kepler 442b. The ship was huge and black like a mountain floating between the stars. Inside its metal walls lived 5,000 humans who had volunteered to make their home on a world that wanted to kill them. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge watching the view screen. Ahead of them, the planet grew larger. It was red and orange like a burning coal. Lightning danced across its surface in patterns that hurt to look at. Around the planet moved a cloud of rocks and ice that had been pulled from space by the world's strong gravity. "Meteor shower dead ahead," called out Navigator Amy Rodriguez. She sat at a control panel covered in lights and switches. Her fingers moved fast over the buttons as she read the numbers on her screen. "Density is increasing. These rocks are big enough to crack our hull." The alien observers on the bridge made worried sounds. Ambassador Zethka stood beside Jake with her clear skin glowing brighter as she became nervous. Other aliens from different races watched through the windows as chunks of stone and metal flew past the ship like angry hornets. "How do you plan to get through that?" asked a creature that looked like a walking tree. Our ships would be torn apart in minutes. Amy smiled without looking away from her controls. Same way we always do, sir. We thread the needle. The Pioneer moved into the meteor field. Rocks as big as buildings tumbled past the windows. Some hit the ship with sounds like thunder, but the hull held strong. Amy guided them between the largest chunks while engineer Pete Johnson kept the engines running smooth. Adjusting course 15 degrees port, Amy announced. There is a clear path between the two biggest clusters. It will be tight, but we can make it. Pete's voice came over the speaker from the engine room. Shields holding steady. These meteors are not as bad as the asteroid belt back home. At least these ones are not shooting at us. The aliens looked confused. The tree creature's leaves rustled as it spoke. Shooting at you? Your own asteroid belt attacks your ships? Jake kept watching the view screen as another rock bounced off their nose. Pirates, sir. They hide in the asteroids and attack cargo ships. Makes for good training, though. If you can fly through a pirate ambush in the Sol asteroid belt, you can fly through anything. Dr. Kate Williams was already preparing the medical bay for what came next. She had been a frontier doctor for 10 years and knew that the real danger was not the trip, but what happened after they landed. Her assistants checked supplies of medicine and bandages while she reviewed data on the planet's native diseases. Standard frontier protocols in effect, she told her team. Expect broken bones from the heavy gravity. Expect burns from the acid rain. Expect infections from unknown bacteria. Expect everything and prepare for worse. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Kate Williams had seen it all on frontier worlds. She had treated miners who had been partially dissolved by chemical springs. She had saved colonists who had been poisoned by plants that looked like earth flowers but were deadly to touch. She had delivered babies in underground shelters while storms raged overhead. The Pioneer broke through the planet's atmosphere with a sound like the world tearing in half. The ship shook as winds that moved faster than bullets tried to knock it from the sky. Rain that could eat through metal drummed against the windows. Lightning turned the air into a web of fire. On the view screen they could see their landing site. It was a valley between two active volcanoes. The ground glowed red with heat from deep inside the planet. Streams of liquid rock flowed like rivers of light. Steam rose from cracks in the earth where underground water met molten stone. "Are you insane?" whispered an alien that looked like a giant crystal. "You are landing between active volcanoes. The thermal readings are off our instruments." Colony Administrator Ben Clark spoke over the ship's communication system. His voice was calm and steady, like he was announcing the weather instead of their arrival in hell. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to New Haven. The temperature outside is hot enough to melt lead. The air will kill you in 30 seconds. The ground is unstable and may open up without warning. In other words, it is a perfect day to start building humanity's newest home." The landing was rough like all frontier landings. The Pioneer scraped against rocky ground as atmospheric storms pushed it sideways. Sparks flew from control panels as the ship's systems worked overtime to keep everyone alive. But within an hour of touchdown, the cargo doors were opening, and humans in environmental suits were walking out onto the surface of hell. Foreman Danny Walsh led the first construction crew. His suit was thick and silver like armor made of metal. Through his helmet window, his face looked excited instead of scared. He had built colonies on 12 different worlds, and each one had tried to kill him in new and interesting ways. "Atmospheric pressure is 3 times Earth normal," he reported over the radio. "Gravity is 1.8 Earth standard. Ground temperature varies from boiling water to hot enough to cook meat. Air is mostly nitrogen with enough sulfur compounds to choke a horse. Seismic activity indicates an earthquake every few hours." He paused to look around at the hellish landscape. "Honestly, this is not as bad as Titan. At least here we do not have to worry about methane geysers." The construction crews began unloading equipment. Giant machines that could work in any environment rolled off the ship on tracks made to grip any surface. Prefabricated building parts were stacked in areas protected from the acid rain. Power generators that could run on geothermal energy were connected to cables that snaked across the ground like metal serpents. Ambassador Zeth Ka watched from the ship's observation deck. Her light-filled body pulsed with colors that showed her confusion and fear. "This is madness. How can they work in those conditions? Our instruments show radiation levels that would cook most organic tissue in hours." Jake checked the readings on his handheld scanner. "The radiation is not too bad, Ambassador. About the same as you would get working on a solar collector station. The real problem is the atmospheric pressure. It makes everything heavier and harder to move." Through the windows, they could see humans setting up the first buildings. The construction crews moved like they were building a house in a nice neighborhood instead of a colony on a world that was actively trying to destroy them. They joked over the radio about which one would be the first to fall into a lava pit. They made bets on how long it would take for the first earthquake to knock down their scaffolding. "Your people are laughing," observed the crystal alien. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "They are in mortal danger and they are laughing." Jake smiled as he watched Danny Walsh's crew raise the first habitat dome. The metal frame gleamed against the red sky like hope made solid. "Sir, laughter is how humans deal with fear. If we can make jokes about something, it means we believe we can survive it." By the end of the first day, New Haven had its first permanent structure, a single habitat dome that could house 50 people in safety from the planet's deadly environment. Power cables connected it to a geothermal generator that drew energy from the planet's own heat. Water pumps pulled moisture from underground sources and filtered out the toxic minerals that night as the alien observers prepared reports for their home. Governments. Jake stood in the dome's observation window looking out at their new world. The landscape was beautiful in a deadly way. Streams of molten rock flowed like ribbons of light between black stone formations. The sky was filled with colors that had no names as gases in the atmosphere reflected light from the system's twin suns. "Captain," came Amy Rodriguez's voice over the intercom. "We are receiving a transmission from Earth. Command wants to know how the landing went." Jake picked up the communication device. Across millions of miles of space, his words would travel to the blue world where humanity was born. "Tell them we are home." In the distance, construction lights moved like fireflies as the night shift continued building humanity's foothold on a world that every other race in the galaxy had declared uninhabitable. Tomorrow they would begin the real work of turning this hell into a home where children could play and families could grow. The aliens had warned them that the frontier was death. But as Jake watched his people work under an alien sky, he knew they had been wrong. The frontier was not death. It was possibility. It was the chance to prove once again that humans could live anywhere they chose to make their stand. And they chose to make their stand here in the valley between two volcanoes on a world that rained acid and breathed poison. Because that was what humans did. They took impossible places and made them home. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched as far as the eye could see. Thousands of alien beings sat in floating chairs that moved through the air like clouds. The walls were made of crystal that showed the stars beyond. In the center of it all stood a human man named Jake Morrison. Jake wore a simple blue uniform with silver stripes on his shoulders. His face was hard like old leather from years in space. Behind him floated a screen showing pictures of a world that looked like hell itself. Red storms covered the surface. Lightning jumped between black clouds. The ground glowed with heat from deep inside the planet. Ambassador Zethkos stood at the speaker's place. She was tall and thin like a glass stick. Her skin was clear and light moved through it like water. When she spoke, her voice sounded like music made of ice. "Captain Morrison," she said, "your people want to live on worlds that kill. This planet you call Kepler 442b has destroyed 2 races before you. The storms will tear your ships apart. The gravity will crush your bones. The air will burn your lungs. No one can live there." Jake stepped forward. His boots made loud sounds on the crystal floor. "With respect, Ambassador, we have looked at your data. We know the risks." The alien crowd made sounds like wind through metal. They had seen many races try to live on the death worlds at the edge of space. All had failed. All had died. The frontier was a place where stars were far apart, and planets tried to kill anything that landed on them. Dr. Lisa Carter moved to stand beside Jake. She was smaller than him with brown hair tied back tight. Her hands held data pads that glowed with numbers and charts. "The conditions on Kepler 442b are difficult but not impossible. Humans have lived in hard places before. A creature that looked like a giant bug clicked its teeth together. Impossible. The radiation alone would kill you in days. The temperature changes would freeze and cook you at the same time. The creatures that live there eat metal and stone." Lisa touched her data pad and new pictures appeared in the air. "Our ships are built to handle radiation. Our suits can work in any temperature. As for the native life, we plan to study them and learn to live alongside them." Another alien stood up. This one was covered in blue fur and had 6 eyes. "You do not understand. The frontier worlds are cursed. They reach out and pull ships from space. They send storms that follow you between stars. They whisper madness to crews in the deep dark. Jake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Sir, we come from a world where the ground shakes and mountains explode, where storms can level cities and cold can freeze blood in your body, where creatures with teeth like knives hunt in packs. We learned to survive there. We learned to make it home. The hall became quiet. All the aliens looked at the human. They had heard stories about Earth, a world of endless war between its people, a world where the weather could kill and the land moved under your feet. Most civilized races would have called such a place uninhabitable. Zethka moved closer to Jake. Her light-filled body cast strange shadows on the floor. Captain, your people are brave, but bravery is not enough. I have seen the frontier take entire star systems. When the void storms come, they strip away atmosphere like peeling fruit. When the gravity wells open, they crush planets to dust. When the things that live in deep space wake up, they devour light itself. Ma'am, Jake said. My grandfather worked on mining ships in asteroid fields where one wrong move meant getting sucked into space with no air to breathe. My grandmother ran supply ships through sectors full of pirates who would kill you for spare parts. My father helped build the first colony on Mars when the dome leaked and people died every week from radiation. We do not expect the universe to be kind to us. The bug creature made a sound like breaking glass. Then why do you go to these places? Why do you choose death over the safety of your homeworld? Lisa answered this time, because that is how humans grow. Every hard place we have ever lived taught us something new. The cold taught us to build better heaters. The heat taught us to find water in impossible places. The storms taught us to read the sky. The predators taught us to work together. She touched her pad again, and the screen showed pictures of human colonies, cities built inside asteroids, farms growing food in the frozen wastes of outer planets, people walking on worlds where the air was poison, but they had found ways to breathe. Each of these places was supposed to kill us, Lisa continued. But humans do not just survive in hard places. We make them better. We turn deserts into gardens. We make homes in the void between stars. We take worlds that want to kill us and we raise children there. An alien that looked like living water spoke in a voice like rain. The frontier has rules. Worlds beyond the safe zone belong to chaos. They change without warning. What is safe one day becomes deadly the next. No civilization has ever tamed them. Jake looked up at the great crystal dome above them. Through it he could see stars that were far away and cold. Maybe no civilization has tried hard enough. Maybe they gave up too easy. Humans do not give up easy. The water alien rippled with what might have been laughter. Pride comes before the fall, Captain. The frontier does not care about your pride. No, sir, Jake said. But it will learn to respect our stubbornness. The debate went on for hours. Alien after alien stood to warn the humans about the dangers that waited in the frontier. They spoke of ships found empty and drifting, of colonies that had vanished without a trace, of signals from the deep dark that drove listeners mad. But Jake and Lisa had answers for everything. They showed designs for ships that could handle any storm. They explained how human bodies could adapt to different gravity and air. They talked about farming methods that could grow food in toxic soil. As the session ended, Zethka approached Jake one more time. This close he could see tiny lights moving inside her clear skin like fish in a glass bowl. Captain Morrison, she said quietly, I have lived for 3,000 of your years. I have seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore. The frontier is not just dangerous. It is hungry. It feeds on hope and dreams and life itself. Please reconsider. Jake looked into her strange eyes and saw real concern there. Ambassador, I appreciate your worry. I really do. But you have to understand something about humans. We are not brave because we do not fear death. We are brave because we fear never having truly lived. The frontier may be hungry, but so are we. Hungry for new worlds. Hungry for new challenges. Hungry to see what is possible when you refuse to accept impossible. The alien touched his arm with fingers that felt like cool wind. Then may whatever gods watch over your species have mercy on you. Because the frontier will not. Jake smiled again, and this time it was warmer. Ma'am, we have never expected mercy from anything. We just expect the chance to prove that humans belong wherever humans decide to go.